keep your enemies closer. Another tactic the elite use to control us is the Hegelian Dialectic. George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel was a utopian idealist that hated the individual and is widely admired among collectivists. If you want love, you must serve. If you want freedom, you must die. Hegel. A philosophy like Hegel's is a self-revelation of the psychic background and philosophically a presumption. Psychologically, it amounts to an invasion by the unconscious. Carl Jung. And what Carl's saying is that quote I had before about Hegel, he's presuming that's how people are because that's how he views himself. And by forcing that idea out onto society, he's really judging himself and how he views himself. In other words, the Hegelian view of humans is really how they view themselves. So remember this, the next time you listen to a psychopath describing someone else who is evil.
And now, a message from the President of the United States.
Tonight I want to take a few minutes to discuss a grave threat to peace. The dictator who is assembling the world's most dangerous weapons is here in our own country. He's the homicidal dictator who is addicted to weapons of mass destruction. He has proven he is capable of any crime. The tyrant is me. I have directed members of the administration to support the use of violence against all of you. I will kill thousands or hundreds of thousands of innocent people in our country and across the world. I resolved to bring sudden terror and suffering with horrible poisons and diseases and gases. Men and women, boys and girls, thousands of civilians will be killed in a single day, murdered at random and without remorse. My ultimate ambitions are to control the peoples of the United States and to blackmail the rest of the world with weapons of mass terror.
So obviously that was somebody taking a bunch of sound bites and having Bush essentially talk about himself. I think it's important insight to see how people view the world is essentially how people view themselves. The Hegelian dialectic is a tool that manipulates us into a powerful circular pattern of thought and action. We become so blinded by two sides that we cannot see that there's even a possibility for another way. By participating in this dialectic, you are advancing the elite's agenda against you. And this is how the Hegelian dialectic works. There's a thesis, which is the main idea, and it's countered by the antithesis, or antithesis. And as these two ideas fight against each other, eventually there's a resolution, which is called the synthesis. And to kind of give you a big global perspective, our modern 20th century history was basically a fight between socialism and communism, and fascism, or as the Americans call it, state capitalism, into controlling how the world is going to be decided. The synthesis of both of those ideas is tyranny, because whether you're under a fascist government, a socialist government, communist government, or what we have today, the state capitalist government, where we have bankers in Washington ruling over Main Street, we have tyranny as the end result, the synthesis of those ideas. And never is free market capitalism or a constitutional republic even an option, because we keep spinning about these two ideas, which eventually lead to tyranny. So we forget to look at a third option because of these two options are constantly thrown in our face. This is another perfect example, the Democrats and Republicans. You know, we have these two parties that are constantly fighting each other. They seem as if on the outset that they're complete opposites because they have these big debates and political campaigns and all this stuff. And yet the synthesis of both of those parties is a centralized power in Washington, D.C. and New York that caters to the elite. And nowhere in there, again, is the Constitution or the Republic or the free market capitalism an option, or the Libertarian Party or another party. I mean, how do we only have two parties in this country when we have so many choices of every other thing? Because it's designed to keep us in a circle and designed to keep us in a box, essentially. Even at the elite level, in Module 3, we looked at these two families, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. You know, on the outset, it seems as if both of them are fighting against each other, that they have ulterior aims. And at the end of the day, they both want a new world order. And nowhere along the line do the rest of us even enter into the picture on an option of a decentralized independent life that we desire. It's only those two major forces fighting against each other. I want to give you some more examples of this because this is an incredibly important idea to grasp. We mentioned in the Rape of Russia section that we had the Rothschild bankers raping Russia, and that the only other force was strong enough to take over was the nationalist Vladimir Putin. So then we have the bankers and then the politicians, a strong nationalist politician, fighting, and those are the only two options, again, fighting back and forth. And at the end of the day, the merger, the synthesis of those two things is still elite rule. It doesn't matter if Vladimir Putin's running the state or the Rothschilds. There's some elite that's running it, and nowhere is a constitutional republic even an option, or even a democracy, or some form lower than that. How about the energy? We have big oil and cap and trade, all these environmentalists fighting back and forth on, what we should do. We have big oil, which is kind of represented by that neocon mentality of invading Iraq and taking over our national strategic policy to be focused on oil and dominating the world's oil and energy reserves. And then you have the opposite, the antithesis of that, which is the environmental movement, which seeks to control our lives through environmental regulation and taxes and act as a counterweight to this ever-expanding energy role. But again, at the end of the day, when those two thesis and antithesis merge, the synthesis, again, is an elite power, whether it's, Halliburton in control or Al Gore in control. There's an elite that's going to be in control of the outcome of this. And nowhere do any of these major issues talk about energy independence. All these environmentalists, they don't promote free energy. They don't promote a less energy intense desire. Their main goal, they may talk about, changing light bulbs and stuff, but their main goal, if you look at all their legislation that they want to pass, and they want to be involved in your life. They want to regulate your thermostat. They want to control every aspect of your life. And again, an elite wants to do that. If we had, for example, instead of this Cash for Clunkers program, if we put solar panels on every person's house and windmills and had a decentralized power structure where every house would be independent, where we wouldn't need this titanic infrastructure of energy, we wouldn't need this entire military-industrial complex guarding and protecting the vast oil reserves. If we actually became independent, none of these issues, cap and trade, pollution, big oil wars, none of them would be an issue. But the elite don't want that, because if we actually had all the power and energy we needed in our own homes, how would the elite control us? They couldn't control us through taxes. They couldn't control us through regulation. It does not serve their interests. So don't hope one day we're going to wake up in a Jetson society where we're going to have our own little nuclear reactor in our own basement and that we can be essentially energy independent, because it doesn't serve their interest. Or how about fight between Muslims and Christians, kind of trying to make this our presence in the Middle East as a holy war, purposely, having us. Osama bin Laden, I think, said that the main reason for the attacks on 9/11 was because we were in the Holy Land of Saudi Arabia. So if the elite can get the Muslims and the Christians to fight against each other, neither one of the sides are going to benefit, but the elite who control the military-industrial complex do. And nowhere along the line does peace come into the world. I firmly believe if most people were left to their own devices and we had diplomacy and envoys, people want peace. There's very few people who want war, except for this elite that benefits and profits off of this, and therefore they have to perpetuate this. And then finally, you have this Washington versus Wall Street mentality. I think CNBC had an hour-long documentary on who's more powerful and who's winning and whose best interest is for us. Neither one of them benefit us. They benefit the elite that run Washington and Wall Street, but nowhere in that conversation did we say a reasonable battle would be who's watching out for Main Street. Neither Washington or New York are watching out for Main Street. And at the end of the day, you guessed it, there's an elite, powerful people that will win in this synthesis idea between Washington and Wall Street. The real genius of this system is that the synthesis, whatever the outcome of that old paradigm, the dialectic, becomes the new thesis, which is met by a new antithesis. So not only is it a circular argument, but once that circular argument is synthesized, it starts off another circular argument. So we have the thesis and antithesis, having that battle together, and eventually it's resolved, whereas both are combined into a new synthesis, and that synthesis becomes the new thesis, which the elite then promptly create a new antithesis to start this circular motion again, to keep us in this box of thinking. And then eventually that synthesis forms another thesis. So you can see this very clearly in our presidents. If you have a successful president that advances the elite's efforts and the people are happy with it, they produce another copy of it, and the antithesis doesn't win. But if that president then fails, they have somebody else already in the wings to take over. Either way, it just keeps perpetuating and moving forward the elite's agenda. Ever since Kennedy, we've become progressively more militant, progressively more taxing, progressively more liberties have been taken away. And it doesn't matter who is in office. Those in power control our reality. And the people that you see here were never in power. There was always a more powerful force behind them, driving their policies, driving the monetary, and driving the ideas, and controlled our reality. So the Hegelian Dialectic is a framework for guiding all of our thoughts and actions into conflicts that lead us into a predetermined solution. All of this is planned out in advance through marketing, through think tanks. All these ideas are put out there because they know the end. They plan to the end.